kicks off with a little girl being summoned to meet Duke Bose. The Duke praises her for being the most outstanding trainee in her class, and she responds with total humility. He tells her he's giving her her first glorious mission, but first, she needs a proper name. He gives her the name Aisha, which honestly catches her off guard. Aisha accepts her new name and waits for her mission orders. The Duke explains that her job is to infiltrate the House of Crest by posing as their long-lost daughter. He assures her that nobody would ever suspect a 5-year-old of being a spy. Aisha vows that if she's ever about to get caught, she'll end her own life for the sake of the kingdom and the Duke. The Duke warns her that Duke Crost is extremely paranoid, but he trusts her skills and orders her to become a child the man will cherish. As Aisha leaves, the Duke says he's looking forward to some good news. Aisha thinks back on the 5 years she spent being raised as a literal weapon for the Bose family. She realizes that with this name and this mission, she's basically headed for a miserable death. Turns out she's been reincarnated into the body of a minor character destined for execution for being a fake daughter. She figures out she's inside a fantasy growth novel called The Sword of Judgment. The story is about a struggle between two villainous families: the Bose family with their poison powers and the Crost family with their ice powers. The protagonist is an illegitimate child from the Bose family who overcomes everything to unite the kingdoms. Aisha laments her fate. Having been raised as a spy in this crazy world, she pieced together that she's in the Sword of Judgment through clues like Bose and spy. She couldn't even tell who she was supposed to be because trainees had no names. All she knew was how brutal life as a spy was. She remembers the hellish training and the punishments she had to endure. During those punishments, she used to wish for a simpler, freer life, even if it meant being a beggar. When she was summoned and given her name and mission, she finally realized she was just a side character doomed to die. She actually finds herself missing those brutal training days since death wasn't a certainty back then, and she's surprised by how calm she's being. She feels it's totally unfair that she was raised as a spy only to die as an extra before the hero even shows up. She thinks about her target, Duke Crost, the novel's main villain. Known for being a cold-hearted man, the Duke became even more violent after losing his family in a war against monsters, searching for them like a madman afterward. His guilt over failing to protect them became his biggest weakness. As a result, he shut himself in his castle, wearing a black mask and avoiding everyone. Aisha accepts the tough mission of becoming the fake daughter of a man like that. While packing, she notices all she owns are some rags and 3 vials of emergency poison. She realizes the only thing she ever got from the Bose family was poison to kill herself with. She regrets that in both her past and current life, she's always handed off to others empty-handed. The journey reminds her of her previous life. In her past life, she was an orphan who trusted the wrong adults who told her she just had to endure hardships. She pushed herself to the limit and eventually died from overworking. She sees the parallel in her current life where she's about to die again just by following orders. Even after realizing she wasn't in a happy story and became a spy, she still held on to hope. She thought that if she could just make it to adulthood, she'd find her freedom somehow. She decides it's way too early to give up. One regretful death is enough, and considers 3 options. She rejects the first 2, acting like the fake daughter, which leads to death, or revealing she's a spy, which leads to instant death. With only one choice left, she approaches one of the knights. She asks the knight to take her to the Duke, confident because of her knowledge of the novel. Her final gamble is to reveal that she knows the location of the real missing young lady. She declares her intention to betray the Bose family and join the Crost family. The knight is skeptical and warns her not to lie, but Aisha stands her ground. To prove she's for real, she reveals a top-secret Crost tradition, sending direct descendants to an ice cave at birth. She claims she heard it directly from the young lady who heard it from her mother, even though she only knows this from the book. The knights are convinced, believing she must be connected to the young lady to know such a secret. A report comes in about someone claiming to know where the young lady is. One of the knights agrees to take her to the Duke, telling her to keep up with his pace. Aisha locks in, knowing the real work is about to start. Her plan is to use her knowledge to help Duke Crost find his daughter in exchange for protection and support. She figures finding the daughter gives her a bargaining chip, even if her true identity is discovered later. After successfully sneaking into the palace, she preps for the next step. Negotiating with the Duke, a woman named Dorothy stops the knight leading her. The knight explains the kid claims to know where the young lady is and asks Dorothy to watch her while he informs the Duke. As Dorothy grabs her, Aisha gets a sudden shock. She recognizes the woman's red hair and green eyes and realizes this is Dorothy. She realizes she totally forgot she'd inevitably run into Dorothy at the palace. Dorothy finds it weird that Aisha's mission has changed from what it was supposed to be. Aisha recognizes Dorothy as the first and only Bose spy to successfully infiltrate the Crest house.
Tilak, match today?
No, just going.
Villain in the novel. Dorothy senses something is fishy and looks ready to pull a weapon. Dorothy decides to take her time to find out the truth, threatening Aisha. Aisha feels hopeless, thinking her survival plan is over before it even started. Dorothy threatens to get rid of her right then and there if she doesn't answer her questions. In a moment of desperation, Aisha pushes Dorothy away. An angry Dorothy screams at her to come back as Aisha runs for her life. Aisha sprints, trying to buy time and think of a way out of this mess. While running, she spots someone wearing a hat and begs for help. She trips and falls right into the arms of a mysterious person. The masked man with red eyes asks who she is and how she got in. Dorothy catches up, so Aisha decides there's no time to explain. In a life-or-death moment, she grabs onto the mysterious man's cloak. She whispers an apology and asks to hide behind him for a second from the scary person chasing her. The man looks back just as Dorothy calls out for the kid. Dorothy looks for Aisha and then spots the masked man. Dorothy addresses the man as Mr. Gardner, while Aisha hides behind him in fear. Aisha gets worried about what she's done by barging in like this. Dorothy asks the gardener if he's seen a 5-year-old girl. She explains the girl is suspicious, appearing out of nowhere claiming to know where the missing young lady is. The atmosphere gets tense at the mention of the young lady, and Aisha feels the extreme loyalty of the palace servants. Dorothy continues her interrogation, asking if he's seen a blonde girl. Aisha panics, fearing the gardener will hand her over to Dorothy. The man denies seeing any child and tells Dorothy to look elsewhere. Aisha is shocked and relieved as Dorothy leaves. The man tells her it's safe to come out and she thanks him. Once she calms down, the man asks if she really knows where the young lady is. He kneels before her, asking for the truth and telling her not to joke around. She explains she was in the same orphanage as the young lady, but she was the only one who managed to escape. The deeply moved man asks where the orphanage is while Aisha expresses her gratitude for his help. The girl insists she won't reveal the orphanage's location to anyone but the Duke directly, fearing bad people might hurt her. She explains that in exchange for the location, she's going to ask the Duke for someone to protect her. She stresses her need for a reliable ally to keep her safe, so the man shows understanding and stands up. She's surprised by his sudden move and wonders where he's going. The man tells her to follow him. He's taking her to see the Duke. As she walks behind him, she thinks about how lucky she was to meet such a kind, upright person who believed her story. She gets exhausted trying to keep up with an adult's pace with her tiny body, so she tries to start a conversation to slow him down. She asks the man if he has kids, and he seems flustered. She apologizes for the personal question, explaining she only asked because he seems so good with kids. The man dodges the question and advises her not to be nervous when meeting the Duke and to just tell him what she knows. He assures her the Duke is more than capable of granting her request as they arrive at a massive door. She remembers that Duke Calyps Krust is the main villain and a terrifying figure in the story. She recalls that before he lost his family, he was worshipped as a hero who protected humanity from monsters. She concludes he might be someone she can reason with, especially after the gardener vouched for his help. Despite that, she can't help but feel nervous while waiting. A man wearing a monocle opens the door and asks who she is, catching her off guard. She gathers her courage and announces she's there to see the Duke. She asks the assistant to tell the Duke that a child who knows the young lady's location is here to meet him. The assistant apologizes, saying the Duke is currently out of the palace. A voice from inside the room orders the assistant to let her in, which shocks the assistant. The assistant expresses relief, asking the Duke where he's been and how everyone struggled to find him, which confuses Aisha. Duke Krust announces he'll listen to the details inside. Upon entering, she's overwhelmed by the Duke's imposing aura and massive build, even though his face is hidden by black cloth. The Duke asks her directly if she knows where his daughter is and where she is now. She holds it together, reminding herself she's practiced for this countless times. Before revealing the location, she asks him to grant her a favor in return. Surrounded by darkness, the Duke swears on the name of the Krust family that he will. She replies that she'd prefer a legally binding contract over a verbal oath. The Duke sharply asks if she's saying she doesn't trust the oath of the ducal house of Krust. She feels his terrifying pressure but forces herself not to tremble. She explains that as an orphan, she has no one to protect her. So, the only thing she can trust isn't an oath, but a legally binding contract. She thinks about how, as a spy raised from birth, nobody would care if she died. Because of that, words that can change depending on the situation are worthless to her. She insists she won't make unreasonable demands because she knows her place. This is just her way of negotiating. The Duke agrees, but says he'll set a condition of his own as well. His condition is that if his daughter isn't at the location she specifies, she'll be executed. She agrees to his condition without hesitation. The Duke accepts and asks her to state her terms. Her only condition is for him to find her a legal guardian to keep her safe until she hits adulthood. The Duke summons his assistant and orders him to draft a contract. She realizes with relief that her negotiation worked. The assistant questions the Duke's seriousness, thinking the contract terms are too harsh for a 5-year-old. The Duke replies he just wanted to see her reaction, which confuses the assistant. The assistant asks if the Duke really believes the kid's words. The Duke confirms his faith in her, but mentions the problem is the location is inside the Bose Duchy. The assistant is shocked, reminding the Duke that Duke Bose just gave an impossible condition for a visit. Duke Bose's conditions were Duke Crost must visit alone without knights, bring only 2 companions, and hand over the plains of crime lands. The assistant argues that visiting enemy territory alone is way too dangerous given the constant provocations. Despite the assistant's pleas to at least sneak in secretly, the Duke decides to accept Duke Bose's terms. The Duke states this is the fastest way to get to the Bose Duchy. He declares he doesn't care if it's enemy land or a battlefield as long as he finds his daughter. The Duke instructs his assistant to inform Duke Bose he'll visit in a week. Then he leaves. The assistant sighs, thinking the Duke always loses his mind when it comes to his family, and that everyone else has already given up hope. He reveals that everyone believes the Duke's missing family is already dead. The assistant finds the girl suspicious and wonders if Duke Bose manipulated her to lure his master into a trap. He decides to investigate the kid as a precaution. Aisha hears the servants whispering about her and the Duke's suicidal plan to visit the enemy kingdom. She's surprised by how fast the rumor spread and notices the servants leaving when they see her. She worries that at this rate someone will suspect her. Dorothy appears behind her, confirming she's heard about the situation too. Dorothy sarcastically congratulates Aisha on successfully luring Duke Crost to the Bose Duchy. Aisha thinks to herself that she never expected him to make an official request to visit. She assumed he'd sneak in or attack with troops. Dorothy remarks that elite spies are different, accomplishing in one move what she couldn't in 6 years. She grabs Aisha, saying that thanks to her, she's become useless to Duke Bose and will be disposed of soon. Dorothy thinks about how everything is going opposite to her plan, with Duke Crost heading to the Bose Duchy alone. She predicts that at this rate, Duke Crost is definitely going to die. She's confident Duke Bose won't miss the chance to kill a hero, even if it brings him shame, and he'll do it in total secrecy. As a result, she and Aisha, who are now useless burdens, will be discarded. Since her life is doomed anyway, Dorothy decides it wouldn't be bad to take a companion with her. As Dorothy prepares to hurt her, Aisha screams that she has an idea. Aisha tells herself to stay calm, believing there must be a way out and noticing Dorothy knows nothing about her contract with the Duke. This means Dorothy can't be sure of her betrayal, and the only way for her and the Duke to survive is to find a solution. Her plan is to tell Duke Crost that Dorothy is a spy, which will give him a reason to bring guards and remove the threat to her as well. To pull this off, she first has to trick Dorothy by mixing truth with lies, claiming they're in the same boat. She asks Dorothy to think rationally with her. She explains that if Duke Bose plans to get rid of Dorothy to cut all ties, it's only natural he'd get rid of her too. Therefore, she argues they aren't enemies, but companions in the same boat, which Dorothy rejects as ridiculous. Aisha.
I can teach you code in Python in just 30 days, even if you've never written a single line of code before. How? Simple. In my 30-day Python using AI bootcamp, you don't learn to
Honestly explains she realized posing as the fake daughter was too risky, so she chose to play the kid who knows the location. Instead, she lies, saying she prepared fake evidence of the young lady being in a Bose Duchy orphanage to gain the Duke's trust, but she didn't expect him to move so fast. She insists there's still a way for them to survive because Duke Bose rewards results. She suggests they take out Duke Crost themselves before he arrives. Dorothy shuts her up, warning her to be quiet if she doesn't want to die. Dorothy grabs her and tells her to follow, and Aisha realizes her trick worked. Dorothy drags her away, sarcastically asking why she doesn't just post a flyer announcing their assassination plan to Duke Crost. Dorothy complains that this is why she was against sending a 5-year-old who can't keep her mouth shut. Aisha notices Dorothy's clenched fist and deduces from her talking too much that she's nervous. Aisha continues her act, loudly declaring she'll lure Duke Crost in, exploiting the idea that people's judgment falters when they panic. She points out that since she's just a kid, the Duke won't suspect a conspiracy. She details her plan. She'll ask for a private meeting to lure him, then Dorothy will finish him off, and then they'll flee to another country. Aisha emphasizes that by succeeding, they'll guarantee their lives, playing on Dorothy's anxiety. She assures her that if the plan fails, Dorothy won't face consequences as long as she herself keeps quiet. Dorothy skeptically asks how a kid like her intends to get a private meeting with the Duke. Aisha confidently answers that the Duke will grant her request immediately if she says she has info about his daughter. Aisha offers her life as a guarantee, insisting she'll be the only victim if things go south. Dorothy finally agrees, thinking she's going to die anyway, and this plan won't hurt her. Aisha celebrates her success in convincing Dorothy. Dorothy warns her she doesn't fully trust her and that she'll be staying with her from now on. If she dies, Aisha dies with her. That night, Aisha thinks about how Dorothy is the Bose family's weakness and that exposing her will give Duke Crost the upper hand. She realizes that if Duke Crost is in a position of power, Duke Bose won't be able to act easily. But she wonders how she'll reveal the truth about Dorothy. Aisha takes the chance when Dorothy briefly leaves to make her next move. She remembers that spies on missions must submit regular reports to their masters. She knows Bose spies write their reports on their clothes using a special solution fueled by their ability. By dipping the clothes in ice water, the secret writing revealing Duke Crust's visit without Knights appears. With that, she's secured physical evidence that Dorothy is a spy and decides she can't just leave the evidence like that. She thinks she has to get back before Dorothy returns. The gardener surprises her, sharply asking what she thinks she's doing. Aisha is startled to see the gardener and thinks about how she was planning to leave quietly after planting the evidence. She laments her bad luck for running into this specific loyal man and tries to make up an excuse. She innocently claims she was drawing a map at night, an excuse that sounds totally childish. She thinks he bought the excuse, but suddenly realizes something bad is about to happen. She's sure the man knows the whole truth, but the man just brings the basket he was carrying closer to her, completely confusing her. Contrary to her expectations, the man asks if she wants a sandwich. She sits with the gardener, thinking he might not have suspected her because she looks like a kid. She thanks him for helping her before, apologizing for being so flustered back then. The man notices the clothes she was washing are way too big for a child. He asks why she's washing clothes that aren't hers, and if she's being bullied by the maid who was chasing her. She makes up a quick lie, claiming she angered the maid by calling her auntie, and tried to make up for it by helping with the laundry. She apologizes for her previous lie, claiming she was scared of getting scolded for being a stranger touching the laundry tools and begs for his forgiveness. He warns her not to do it again because her actions could hurt the Crust family's reputation if others saw. She wonders if he's actually worried about her and notices that the more she looks at him, the warmer he seems despite his cold appearance. She asks if he brought the sandwich specifically for her, adding that it was hard to even get a piece of bread at the orphanage. The man deduces that they clearly didn't feed her well there. She tells him she's never tasted anything this delicious, so he encourages her to eat until she's full. She feels warmth from a kindness she hasn't felt in a long time. She remembers how he believed her and protected her since their first meeting. She realizes that even if he's just a gardener, he belongs to the Crust family, and if he becomes her ally, she might get the Duke's protection. She decides what she needs isn't just someone strong, but someone warm just like him. She believes if he became her guardian, she might find true happiness after solving the Dorothy problem. She calls out to him and tests the waters by asking if he's ever thought about having a child. The man repeats her question, and Aisha feels a strange, sudden shift in the atmosphere. The man coldly answers that he doesn't need another child. From the word another, she realizes he already has a child. He tells her to get up, so she concludes that's why he didn't answer her earlier question. She doesn't know what happened to him, but she feels like he looks sad for some reason. She feels a bit disappointed, thinking she'd feel safe with someone like him as a guardian, but she scolds herself for her weak emotions. She decides she has to focus on survival no matter what. Dorothy bursts into the room, screaming her name, angrily asking where she was. Aisha calmly answers she was having a snack with the gardener, which makes Dorothy suspicious. She lies with a big smile, claiming she was pretending to get close to him to gather info, telling herself not to be greedy for happiness. Dorothy tells her to explain her plan from here on out. The scene shifts to a private meeting with the masked Duke Crost. Aisha remembers what she told Dorothy, that she'd ask for a private meeting on the pretext of remembering extra info. She had explained the Duke is desperate for any info, so luring him won't be hard. The Duke asks how secret the info is that it required a private meeting. Aisha tells him the young lady told her something important, and this conversation happened in a closed room with only her and Dorothy. She continues narrating her fake plan to Dorothy. After they're left alone, Dorothy will assassinate the Duke. Then they'll use the chaos to escape and hide, believing Duke Bose will overlook them after the mission is done. Aisha explains that Dorothy won't succeed in the assassination because the person being assassinated isn't him. It turns out the real target of the assassination in the plan wasn't the Duke, but herself, as she jumps in front of Dorothy's dagger. The Duke calls her name in shock, while a stunned Dorothy asks why she did it. The Duke screams for help, announcing there's an assassin. Aisha thinks about how she avoided a vital spot thanks to her training, but it still hurts, and the plan is moving forward. Dorothy looks at her with pure rage. Aisha smiles, realizing her plan was a success. The narration goes back 5 years when monster hordes overran the continent. While humanity was pushed into a desperate defensive struggle, the lands were destroyed. In the middle of the despair, a hero appeared, Duke Calypso Crust. Using the ice ability passed down in his family, he wiped out the monsters and built a great defensive wall. The continent's morale soared, and after 5 years of fighting, the war finally ended with a human victory. The Duke returned triumphant, hailed as a hero and a pillar of the kingdom, gaining the Emperor's trust, the nobles' admiration, and the people's cheers. But what waited for the hero upon his return was the news that his beloved family had vanished. In a single day, Duke Crust lost everything, and he searched for them frantically without finding a single clue. Gradually, he began to feel madness creeping into his heart. He wondered what the point of everything he did was, when all he wanted was to protect a place where his family could live in peace. He never imagined the end of his desperate struggle would cost him everything. He felt he wasn't in a state for anyone to see him and realized the titles of hero and shield had become useless. He saw himself as just a coward who couldn't even show his face without a mask. He felt tired of everything, of waiting for news about his family whose fate he didn't know. He was sick of pretending to be okay, of hiding his expressions behind a mask, and of carrying the responsibility of the duchy. He decided it was time to end it all. He had endured enough. Just as he was about to end his life, Aisha interrupted him by asking for help. She hugged him, asking to hide from a scary person chasing her. The Duke reveals to himself that he knew Aisha was a spy from the very beginning. For decades, his family had opposed the Bose family, and he knew them well. He was aware of their poison-based abilities, their fabrication skills, their spies, and even their communication methods. He couldn't help but suspect her from the first moment. And in the laundry room, he became certain that this child was a spy sent by the Bose family. But he wondered why she would go this far, as she seemed, through their conversations and the terms of their contract, more sincere than anyone else in her grip on life. The Duke wonders if this is all just another one of Bose's schemes, or maybe she really does want to betray Bose and ask for his protection. In the end, thanks to her, they finally have a solid reason to march their knights right into the Bose duchy. He decides he's gonna have to keep an eye on her for a bit longer. Aisha wakes up to find the Duke by her side and wonders just how long she's been out. The Duke scolds her for being so reckless. He explains that if that blade had been off by even a tiny bit, it would have shredded her organs and killed her. She happily realizes that her plan actually worked. She decides she needs to play her cards right with his questions, starting by reminding him of his promise to protect her. The Duke cuts her off, revealing he already knows she's a spy for the Bose family. He tells her to drop the fake flattery and mentions that the woman who tried to kill her was named Dorothy. He explains that the maid was also busy collecting evidence that Aisha was a spy, showing there was zero trust between them. Aisha realizes that Dorothy's disappearances weren't for missions, but to gather dirt on her. She beats herself up for being so short-sighted. She thinks about how if Dorothy had exposed her, her real identity would have been toasted. That's why she had no choice but to risk it all and take that stab for the Duke. She figured if everyone saw a kid risking her life for him, Dorothy's accusations would be ignored. But she never imagined Dorothy was building a case against her too. And now she feels like it's game over. In total despair, she asks if she's gonna die too. She tries to keep it together while panicking, but the Duke calms her down by placing his hand on her head. The Duke tells her to relax. He hands her a document and tells her to read it. He assures her their contract is still on and that he's the only one who knows she's a spy. He tells her there's no need to freak out or be scared. He promises that if his daughter is actually where she said, he'll arrange for a Viscount's family to adopt her. He reinforces that he knew the truth about her all along. She asks why he's helping her, and he says it's because she saved him by taking that hit. He adds that she's saved his life twice now, so he basically owes her one. Because of that, he felt he had to give her a chance in return, and she thanks him with everything she's got. He tells her to stop with the small talk and just get some rest. After stopping that assassination attempt, she's become the little hero who saved the Duke. She wonders if it's even okay to be pampered like this at her age. She decides to enjoy the temporary peace, knowing she still has to find the young lady to keep this life going. Because of the Dorothy incident, Duke Crust got a formal apology from Duke Bose and headed to the Kingdom of Doctia with 50 knights, claiming he didn't trust them. Before leaving, the Duke let her stay at the castle until a proper guardian could be found. to find a survival plan soon since she can't just stay in limbo. She offers to help one of the maids hang the laundry. The maid notices her spacing out, so Aisha asks if the gardener is off today. The maid says she doesn't know who she means, but maybe he's on a break while the Duke is away. She remembers that while she was stuck in bed, the gardener used to visit her. She was surprised by his first visit and him asking how she was doing. She learned from him that Duke Krost personally let him look after her, and thanks to him, she didn't get bored while recovering. She tells him she doesn't think the Duke is scary anymore and that she probably misunderstood him. He asks why, and she says it's because he trusted and forgave her despite her massive mistake. He asks what mistake she's talking about. She playfully says it's a secret between her and the Duke, and just like that, the gardener became someone special to her. He was the first adult to actually help her and be kind, but he vanished the moment the Duke left. She wonders if he's mad she didn't tell him the secret and wishes he'd at least said goodbye. She sees a happy family of palace staff and wishes she had something like that. She remembers the gardener seemed to have a kid too and figures he went on vacation with his family, which makes her a bit jealous. She really wishes she had a family like them. A maid interrupts her, saying it's time to get ready. She realizes there's no time to be sad because today is a big day. Today is the day she's being introduced to the Frisia Viscount family. The couple welcomes her warmly, telling her not to feel pressured. She introduces herself with perfect manners. They're amazed by her etiquette and wonder if the Duke taught her himself, but she's thinking she actually learned it all in spy training. She claims she studied hard on her own just to meet them. They're impressed and ask how old she is. She says she's 5, and the Viscount asks if she's heard about their family. Aisha gears up for the real interview. She thinks about how she's memorized everything about them for this moment and is sure she'll score some points. She tells them they earned their noble title despite being commoners because of their farming skills. She adds that their land is called Frendia, a fertile area famous for wheat. She announces her dream to study farming and get her hands dirty if they adopt her. She vows she's even ready to marry for the family's glory and hopes to be the foundation for Frisia's prosperity. She asks herself if she overdid it, thinking this is exactly what a perfectly prepared adopted daughter looks like. She's surprised when their faces suddenly change. They thank her for studying their history so deeply and realize why Duke Krost praised her so much. She wonders if she messed something up and decides she has to win them over somehow. She suddenly jumps up to tell Lady Frisia she wrote a poem for her since she heard she loves poetry. The head maid interrupts, announcing a telegram from the Duke. They assume it's good news, maybe that the young lady was found, and get ready to celebrate. The head maid sadly tells them the young lady wasn't found. She explains they found nothing at the orphanage or nearby areas, and the Duke is on his way back. Aisha is absolutely crushed by the news. Meanwhile, Duke Krost arrives at the Andra Swamp in the Bose Duchy. The Duke thinks about how the place is untouched by humans, and that if his daughter was here, her chances of survival are 0. He declares there's nothing left, wondering how he's even supposed to remember Eve. He orders his men to retreat. He realizes he's completely lost his reason to live. He feels like everything should end now. It's the only way he can pay for his sins. Aisha realizes the original story has totally changed, as the girl's body was supposed to be found at the orphanage. She wonders if her interference changed the plot and remembers the Duke is coming back soon. She concludes the only reason the Duke hid the fact that she's a spy was because she gave him his daughter's location and their contract is still active. But if the girl isn't there, she's just a burden with no place in his house. She becomes a target for elimination and realizes she's definitely going to die this time. She decides she has to survive and remembers she's memorized the entire palace layout. She escapes through a vent leading to the garden, thinking no one will find her there. Aisha wonders if she's doomed to spend the rest of her life on the run. She just wanted her new life to be different. She remembers her past life and how she was always blamed for stuff that wasn't her fault. After her parents died and she fled her abusive relatives, she ended up drowned in debt, which made life suffocating. That's why all she wanted in her new life was to be normal and great. Even though she was reincarnated as a minor villainess, she thought she could change her fate with her knowledge of the story. But now she finds out you can't fight destiny and that she'll never escape this miserable loop. Even born again, she's still the same. She thinks the only perk of this body is that she can end it all, without any pain. The Duke returns to the castle and is greeted. His servant tells him the Viscount and his wife are waiting to see him. The exhausted Duke tries to push the meeting back, but his knight tells him the little girl is gone. The knight informs him that the girl who claimed to know the young lady's location has vanished. A maid adds that she disappeared right after hearing the daughter wasn't at the orphanage, and that they found a potion bottle in the storage. The Duke immediately recognizes it as the Bose family's suicide poison bottle. The Duke wonders why the bottle was even there. He remembers Aisha's words about him being her savior and her faith in him. The Viscount suggests searching for Aisha, worried she might be in danger. The Duke suddenly bolts out. He realizes he has to find her before the poison spreads through her body. He goes out searching, calling her name. He's worried she might have left the castle after drinking the poison. He thinks about how, despite being a spy, she was so desperate to survive that she entrusted her life to him, her enemy. He concludes that if she resorted to suicide poison just because his daughter wasn't there, she never intended to trick him from the start. He realizes Duke Bose must have moved his daughter after Aisha escaped his territory. He calls out to her again, imagining the sheer terror she must have felt. He wonders if she's lost her will to live, just like he did before, and drank the poison. He convinces himself that's impossible. She's just a clumsy kid. He remembers how scared she was, but still boldly proposed a deal, and how she smiled with relief after their negotiation. He was so happy she finally found a way to survive and knows she didn't lie to him. He blames himself, wondering what he's done, since she bet her life on that info. He remembers she's just a 5-year-old child. He fears she might have committed suicide out of fear of the executioner's sword. He sincerely apologizes to her. He hears a faint voice calling, "Sir?" and turns around to look for her. He calls her name, wondering if she's there. Aisha apologizes to him, admitting she was about to end it all because of her many mistakes. She expresses her fear and her desire to live. The Duke declares to himself that he wants to live too. Even if there are many reasons to die, he's found a reason to live in protecting this child. He reaches out to her, telling her to grab his hand because the place is dangerous. She hesitantly tells him that if he helps her, he'll be taken away too. He's surprised by her worrying about him even in this state, and wonders what pushed her to such despair. He assures her she did nothing wrong, and that the blame lies with the adults who messed up. He admits his
क्या आपको पता है इंडिया में कितने % लोगों को स्टॉक मार्केट में लॉस हुआ है?
give him a chance to make amends. He grabs her hand and tells her not to let go, to hold on tight. He pulls her out of the vent and hugs her. Aisha thinks the Duke is her savior, but he corrects her. He tells her she's wrong and that the person who was saved was himself. Aisha wakes up from a beautiful dream for the first time in a while. It was a dream about her parents from her past life singing her a lullaby, but it suddenly turned into a nightmare where she asked her mom where the young lady was. She wakes up gasping and realizes she's in a strange room. The room looks like a noble's bedroom. A familiar voice tells her she was sweating a lot in her sleep, and she recognizes him as the Sir. She's shocked to see his handsome face without the mask. He smiles and tells her it's time for breakfast. She remembers the man found her in the sewage system and wonders why he hasn't handed her over yet. She realizes she's considered a dangerous criminal to the Krust family. She calls out to ask where she is. He tells her they'll eat first, then talk, and after they finish, she asks when she'll be taken away. He assures her that won't happen because he tore up the contract, and she panics, wondering if he ran away with her. He presents her with the adoption request she wanted. He reminds her she said she needed a guardian. He asks her to become his daughter. She asks in confusion, so he tells her to check the document herself. She asks if it's really okay for her to be his daughter, and he says he has no intention of lying to a child. She worries he might become a fugitive because of her, as she doesn't want to lose the first adult who cared for her. He asks why she's hesitating. She expresses her gratitude for his protection, but doesn't want to make him a runaway too. So he tells her not to worry about the Krust family. He admits he knows she's no ordinary child, but that he's more than capable of handling the situation. He summons the servants, who address him as Your Highness. The servants are shocked to see the Duke without his mask for the first time in years. Aisha connects the mask, the fancy room, and the bowing servants, and the truth hits her. The Duke officially announces that the young lady of House Krust as of today is Aisha Krust, and she's stunned to realize the Sir is Duke Krust himself. The Duke repeats the announcement to his servants and orders them to treat her accordingly. Aisha is still in shock, unable to believe the man she knew is the Duke himself. He asks if there's a problem or if she's changed her mind about the adoption. She now realizes there were so many suspicious signs she ignored. Despite claiming to be a gardener, he let a spy recover freely and no one stopped him. She blames herself for not realizing the truth sooner. She laments that despite all her efforts, she ended up as Duke Krust's adopted daughter, just like in the original story. But she thinks one thing has changed. She accepts his offer, realizing the man standing before her isn't the villain from the novel, but the person who cares for her more than anyone else. And the Duke says he's looking forward to it too. Aisha's adoption throws the Duke's castle, which had been quiet for 5 years, into total chaos. The maids are fangirling over the Duke's handsome face for the first time, wondering why he ever hid it behind a mask. One of the servants questions the Duke's decision to adopt a lying kid. Others assume his judgment is clouded because he misses his daughter. The head maid shuts them up, reminding them they have to follow the Duke's orders no matter what. She tells them to get back to work. In the Duke's office, the assistant asks how the kid is doing. The Duke tells the assistant that Aisha is fine, but he asks why he's asking. The assistant asks the Duke if he has anything to tell him first. The Duke realizes his assistant is there to talk about his daughter, and the assistant sarcastically remarks that one might think she was his biological daughter. The Duke answers that he doesn't see adopting a stray kid as a big deal, as this isn't the first time an orphan has entered his home. The assistant admits Aisha is smart and follows orders well, but a kid with no clear background claiming to know the young lady's location is super suspicious. And more importantly, the young lady wasn't at that location. The assistant argues that everything might have been a lie from the start. The Duke warns his assistant, Knox, to watch his mouth. Knox insists he has to say what needs to be said, reminding the Duke of the spy they caught and the suspicious moves by the Kingdom of Doctia. He explains they've always craved the Duke's power, and that if it weren't for House Krost protecting the continent from monsters, the Kingdom of Doctia would have invaded long ago. He asks the Duke to judge the situation calmly, and the Duke asks if he's questioning his judgment. He suggests sending Aisha to an orphanage or having her adopted by other nobles, like they always do. The Duke refuses, insisting Aisha is already his daughter and that he's signed the adoption papers. Knox reminds the Duke of all the kids who came to trick him after his family disappeared. He asks why it has to be this kid, specifically as he doesn't think the Duke's judgment has been blinded by pity. The Duke answers that he had no other choice in his life but to save that child. Knox asks for an explanation, and the Duke tells him he dedicated himself to protecting his family home. But all that's left now is a worthless medal, and he was just too exhausted. That child came to him like salvation, and he asks Knox to trust him just this once. Knox finally agrees but asks the Duke for one promise. If Aisha really is tricking him and becomes a threat to House Krost, he must be ready to let her go without hesitation. Aisha spots Sir Knox and decides to try and get on his good side since he helps the Sir. She greets him enthusiastically. Knox answers coldly, which makes her sad. She sighs, expecting this reaction after being labeled a liar.
Flex that battery life. Gets it.
Flight 682323.
Even though she's used to being disliked, it still hurts. She encourages herself to try harder because the Sir has her back. She runs to the Duke's room and he asks why she's there. She tells him she felt bored and lonely and has something to tell him. She hands him a biscuit with writing on it, and he discovers it's a telegram from the Bose Duchy. She explains they train mice to nibble biscuits into the shape of letters, then the biscuit is destroyed after reading to leave no trace. She explains that Duke Bose and his spies communicate with extreme precision. A spy writes a report on their uniform and sends it to a base disguised as a repair shop. On the other hand, when the Duke sends a telegram, he uses the mice. Messages are delivered by these mice through invisible paths. Thanks to this precise system, Duke Bose has managed to stay alive until now. The Duke reads the message, which confirms the adoption mission is complete and orders a focus on the upcoming air selection test. Aisha is shocked to read that Dorothy has been disposed of and realizes this is the fate of a failed spy. For a moment, she remembers this harsh reality that she'd forgotten because of the Sir's kindness. Even though Dorothy wasn't a good person, Aisha is now the only one who remembers she even existed. The Duke sharply asks if she's saying this telegram was sent to her from the Bose Duchy. She realizes she might have revealed too much info and that mentioning the heir will trigger him. She thinks about how choosing a successor for Duke Krost was a major plot point in the original story. She blames herself for not considering his feelings, especially since it hasn't been long since his hope of finding his daughter collapsed. The Duke crushes the biscuit in anger, wondering if this is something to say to a 5-year-old. Aisha thinks he's more upset than she thought, so the Duke summons the head maid, May. He asks her to look after Aisha for a moment and call Knox. Aisha notices the Duke looks really angry and wonders if everything is going to be okay. Aisha happily remembers how the Duke got angry on her behalf and feels overjoyed. She decides she shouldn't keep relying on him. She wants to become someone he can rely on too. As May gets ready to leave, Aisha decides she first needs to get rid of her liar image. She thinks if she keeps approaching May warmly, maybe she'll like her one day. She offers to share her cake, saying it's too much for her to eat alone. May refuses, so Aisha offers her other sweets the Duke gave her. May coldly tells her she doesn't need to force herself to get close to them. She explains that no servants want to be close to someone like her, someone who broke their promise to find the young lady. Despite the rejection, Aisha smiles and invites her to eat together next time. May hesitates for a second before leaving Aisha alone again. Meanwhile, in the Duke's office, the Duke expresses his disappointment in Knox's abilities. The Duke tells Knox that the maid who tried the assassination has died in the underground prison. The Duke wonders how that happened despite his strict orders for surveillance. Knox explains that an investigator and a knight were sent to watch, but the maid was already dead when they arrived. The maid showed signs of resistance, but the investigator apparently committed suicide. The Duke moves on to the topic of the upcoming air selection test. He notices the internal atmosphere of House Krust has been unstable lately. He orders Knox to step up security and monitor Aisha's surroundings. At the upcoming heir selection test, the Duke announces he intends to officially introduce Aisha. Later, he tells Aisha directly that he'll introduce her at the test. She's surprised, so he reminds her she's now an official member of House Krust. She points out she doesn't have any ice powers. The narration explains that mastering the ice ability is a massive advantage for passing the 3 heir trials. Usually, direct Krust descendants become the heirs, but with the Duke's family currently gone, no one can legitimately claim the spot. The Duke explains he just wanted to officially announce she's his daughter. He realizes this traditional family event is the perfect time to introduce her, and after that, no one will dare treat her badly. She wonders if he noticed she's being subtly shunned and thinks she's fine as long as he's by her side. She thanks him and realizes that having him by her side is more than enough. He tells her he's leaving on a mission to subdue monsters tomorrow, and that she should ask Knox for anything she needs. She realizes that's why he's wearing heavy clothes and that she'll be on her own for a while. He jokingly adds that if Knox gives her a hard time, he'll look the other way if she smacks him on the head, which shocks Knox. Knox wonders in confusion why he'd let a kid smack him. The Duke asks Knox to come with him for a quick meeting before deployment. Knox sighs, reluctantly agreeing to the Duke's decision. The next day, the Duke heads north to subdue the monsters. And Knox was literally watching her 24 hours a day. Knox wonders aloud if all kids waddle like ducks or if it's just her. May answers that it's normal at her age and adds that recent studies suggest the cuteness of small creatures is a defense mechanism to protect themselves from predators. Knox continues his analysis, adding that they use their cuteness to gain affection and secure protection, and Aisha thinks to herself that she can hear him. She thinks about how she first thought he was a strict man but is discovering he's actually a total weirdo. A maid bursts into the room calling for Sir Knox, who asks why she's in such a rush. She tells him that Marquis Lillis has arrived out of nowhere, while Aisha overhears and wonders who this guy is. It turns out Marquis Lillis is the head of a branch family of the Krusts, and he's known for being a flashy aristocrat, nothing like the Nightlight Krust family. Knox orders the maid to tell the Marquis to come back later, suspicious of why he's showing up now. The Marquis suddenly appears, claiming he was just passing by, but Aisha figures he's just trying to take advantage of the fact that there's no heir. Knox tells the Marquis that the Duke is out hunting monsters, so the Marquis plays dumb, which totally annoys Knox. Aisha thinks about heading back to her room to stay out of the awkward tension between the two. But then, a boy named Tex bumps into her, causing her to fall. Knox rushes to check on Aisha, who tells him she's fine. Tex rudely asks who gave them permission to block his path. He glares at his ruined new clothes, thinking Aisha is just some arrogant kid. Aisha decides apologizing is better than arguing, so she says she's sorry. She explains she just wasn't looking where she was going. Tex snaps that an apology isn't enough for ruining his clothes. He rudely demands she get on her knees if she's actually sorry, while Tex is making a scene. Knox steps in and reminds Lord Tex that Aisha is the direct heir and the lady of the Croix Duchy. Tex scoffs at him, calling Aisha a pathetic brat. Aisha recalls that in the original novel, Tex Lillis was actually the next in line for the duchy. Tex recognizes her as the adopted kid from the rumors and tells her she'll never be the heir. He says the Krust family doesn't need an heir who can't even use ice powers. Aisha fires back that he doesn't exactly look like heir material himself. This makes Tex lose it, and he approaches her threateningly. He declares he's going to show her what real power looks like. Tex launches an ice attack, forcing Knox to jump in.
Once upon a time, in a Gucci box with plenty of tissue paper, there lived a bag named Jackie. What would it be this time?
Tex sarcastically asks if she still thinks he's nothing after seeing his strength. Aisha thinks to herself that people respect the Duke because he uses his power to protect, not to bully. She tells him that anyone who uses their strength to threaten others has zero character and doesn't deserve to be heir. An angry Knox shouts at Tex to stop right there. He warns Tex that he'll pay for his actions if he keeps trying to hurt the young lady. Knox lets out a powerful aura as he faces off against Tex. Marquis Lillis jumps in with a sarcastic comment about Knox's loyalty. The Marquis threatens that he'll re-educate the Duke's followers once his son becomes the heir. Knox just gives a savage smile and says he'll keep that in mind. The Marquis and his son leave after calling Knox an insolent brat. Knox tells the maid to take Aisha back to her room. Aisha notices a pen that fell out of the Marquis's pocket. She picks it up and finds the name Luce engraved on it. Back in her room, Aisha remembers that the Duke's family used to have 5 members. She thinks about how everyone vanished except for the Duke. She recalls that the second son, Lucas, was eventually found in a circus after being kidnapped by a slave trader. Then it clicks. That slave trader's name was Luce. She connects the dots between the Marquis's ambition and the kidnapping of the Duke's kids. She concludes that Marquis Lillis is either Luce himself or his partner. She thinks about her original plan to tell the Duke where his lost kids are, but she hesitates because her previous info about the daughter was wrong. She's scared that if she's wrong again, she won't just be kicked out. She'll have broken the Duke's heart all over again. But then she remembers the Duke's kindness and how much he misses his real kids. She decides to push past her fear and do her best for him. Meanwhile, Knox is fuming over the Marquise's rudeness. He admits that Aisha handled the situation surprisingly well. He wonders if the Duke saw some potential in her that could help him. He hopes he can finally move past the grief of the lost young masters. Suddenly, a noise in his office startles him. It's a mouse. He finds it. Weird that there's a mouse in the castle and notices its footprints. He remembers the Duke's warning that Beau's spies use mice to communicate. He links the appearance of the mouse to the spy they caught a few days ago. He figures there's another spy left and feels like a fool forever trusting Aisha. He follows the tracks to Aisha's room and bursts in. He confronts her angrily, demanding to know what she was writing. Out on his mission, the Duke gets an urgent message from Knox. He orders a portal to be opened so he can return immediately, despite being mid-mission. The message says Aisha was caught messaging the Duke of Beau's and is on her way to a meeting point. Knox is seen leading Aisha to a carriage, looking absolutely furious with her. In a flashback, it's revealed that Aisha knew her options were limited with the Duke away. She decided to use Knox and his constant stalking to pull off her plan. She knew he'd be hyper-aware of spy tactics after the Dorothy incident. She figured Knox was the only person who could handle the situation as the Duke's proxy. We go back to the moment Knox confronted her about what she was writing on her clothes. Knox reads her message, which sets a meeting at the O'Hilly Circus. He realizes this is a classic Beau's spy move, which is exactly what Aisha wanted. Knox declares they're going to that circus together on the set date. In the carriage, Aisha thinks that if she doesn't find Lucas, she can just pretend she was joking. She notices Knox's angry silence after she tricked him into coming along. His total silence is honestly terrifying. She tells herself she has to deal with his anger because she used him for a good cause. They finally arrive at the noisy circus. Aisha knows this is the place the original novel mentioned for the second, young master. She figures they'd classify Lucas as top-tier merchandise because of his powers. She remembers the circus is just a front for illegal stuff. We're talking human trafficking, kidnapping, the whole deal. Knox is struggling with the massive crowd. Aisha decides to use the chaos to slip away from him. She knows her hands are tied if she stays with him. She ignores his shouts and goes off to find Lucas on her own. She tells herself that saving Lucas is the only thing that matters right now. She figures Lucas, with his insane powers, would be treated as a rare product. She concludes he must be held somewhere the public can't reach. She decides to become merchandise herself to get inside, but she gets caught immediately. Aisha pretends to be a lost kid in front of two masked men, claiming her parents are looking for her. One of the guys offers to take her to the staff room, asking what her parents look like. Aisha describes her parents as wealthy and decked out in expensive clothes to hint at her value as a hostage. She knows that in her fancy Duke-tier clothes, she's a huge prize for kidnappers. She realizes her plan is super risky, but she's out of time. The guy falls for it and tells her to follow him, thinking he's hit the jackpot. She overhears the men talking about a visitor coming after the event. Their talk about checking some merchandise makes Aisha curious. She hears them mention Duke Beau's and realizes they're being extra careful on his orders. The whole picture comes together. Duke Beau's is the mastermind behind everything. She's terrified that Duke Beau's is personally involved, which could ruin all her plans. Before she can process it, one of the guys hits her from behind. Through the pain, memories of her brutal training come. Rushing back, she remembers how they brainwashed her to be totally loyal to Duke Beau's since she was a baby. She recalls the oath
10 minutes is all you need, so I was shoot today and I have to look my best. Every time deserve a purple ending.
everything to him, even their lives. As she loses consciousness, she wonders if she'll ever escape Beau's grip. She wakes up to find a young boy watching her, and for a second, she thinks it's the Duke. But then she sees his blue eyes and jet black hair. He looks exactly like a mini version of Duke Croust. It's definitely Lucas. She's so relieved she found him, thinking everything will be easy now. Lucas asks her how she ended up in this dump. She lies and says she got lost, so he won't get suspicious. He coldly tells her that her only hope of getting out is if her parents are loaded. He reveals he's been stuck there for 5 years. This confirms it's Lucas, since the timing matches exactly when the second son went missing. She excitedly suggests she free him so they can run away together. He scoffs at her, thinking she's wasting her time, but she insists she's got away. He explains the chains aren't normal. They were custom-made by the Beau's family to suppress powers. She doesn't care. She was trained relentlessly on how to break these things. She remembers her instructor threatening to kill her if she didn't break chains in 5 seconds. She smashes the chains in an instant, leaving Lucas speechless. He's shocked and accuses her of being sent by Duke Bose. Aisha panics and tries to deny it. He asks how she could break the chains if she wasn't one of Bose's people. She realizes she messed up big time when she accidentally calls him by his name. He faces her coldly, mocking that Bose sent a naive kid after sending adults to torture him. He flat out calls her a Bose spy, and she strongly denies it. Her instructor's words ring in her head, that she can never outrun her past. She remembers that everyone around her knew who she really was, but then she thinks of Duke Crost, who trusted her and called her his daughter. She admits to Lucas that she was a spy, but she never chose that life. She explains she was abandoned at birth and forced into training. She tells him how hard she fought to escape that painful existence. She reveals she was saved by the kindness of the Christ family. She tells him she heard about him while she was with Bose and thought he'd want to escape too. She promises to take him back to his dad and asks him to run with her. Lucas refuses, saying he doesn't trust anyone but himself anymore. He lets his ice powers go wild, furious that his dad didn't find him for 5 long years. He smashes the wall to make an exit, leaving her behind. Aisha feels hopeless because Lucas thinks she's with Bose, and she's terrified of what'll happen if he runs into Knox. She realizes the building is collapsing on her because of Lucas's explosion. She crawls out of the rubble, thinking Lucas is softer than she expected. She notices his ice actually weakened her restraints, letting her break free easily. She's amazed by his massive power, which is way beyond what Tex had. She decides to find him before he hits Knox to avoid a disaster. She hears a meow and finds a tiny kitten stuck. Meanwhile, Lucas thinks about how ridiculous it was to be a prisoner for so long. He can't stop thinking about Aisha's sincere words. He wonders if her story was actually true and if she was a spy against her will. He compares her struggle to his own 5 years of waiting for his dad. He realizes that unlike him, she never gave up. He regrets being so mean to her and thinks he should have talked to her more. He wonders why she hasn't escaped yet, only to be shocked to see her trying to save a cat. He's stunned she's risking her life for a kitten in this crazy situation. He watches her, wondering what kind of person she really is. He goes back to her, and she's surprised to see him, but he angrily asks why she's still there. She says it's because of the cat, and he calls her an idiot just before he spots danger. Aisha sees the look of pure terror on Lucas's face, and she turns to see a masked man attacking him. Aisha screams for Lucas to warn him. Somewhere else, Knox is negotiating with the kidnappers who are demanding 5,000 gold pieces. Knox realizes the people he met at the meeting point weren't Aisha's allies. He smirks, realizing he's just dealing with regular kidnappers. A man bursts in to report that the top-tier merchandise has gone berserk after breaking free. The word merchandise catches Knox's attention. He feels a massive aura of special power coming from the chaos. He realizes this can only be the Christ family's signature ice power. He desperately wonders if the lost young masters are actually here. He reaches the source of the mess and decides to message the Duke immediately. Knox gets surrounded by masked men, but he faces them calmly. The kidnappers mock him and decide to finish him off. As they attack, Knox closes his eyes, cursing the situation. Suddenly, the kidnappers are caught in a surprise ice ambush. The attackers recognize Duke Crost's banner and realize they're doomed. Duke Crost, who just arrived, asks Knox where Aisha is. Knox points to a nearby door, trying to warn the Duke that Aisha is a spy. The Duke cuts him off firmly, saying he's the one who will decide her fate. Knox reluctantly follows orders. The Duke smashes the door open and enters the dark room. He's shocked by the scene. Lucas is holding an unconscious Aisha. The Duke thinks Aisha should be asleep at this hour. He wonders in pain and confusion why she's here in such a terrible state. The Duke is in total shock seeing Aisha there. Lucas creates an ice barrier and warns the Duke not to get any closer. Lucas recognizes the ice power and asks if he's Duke Crost. Knox is stunned, wondering if this boy is the lost young master. Lucas bitterly blames his dad for making him wait 5 years while he was off hunting monsters, seemingly uncaring about his son's fate. Lucas shuts down his dad's attempt to explain, saying he doesn't want excuses or regrets. Crying, Lucas begs his dad to at least save the injured girl. The Duke looks at his son, who is pleading for Aisha's life. Back at the palace, May the head maid talks to another maid about Aisha being gone since yesterday. May figures that her sudden departure with Sir Knox means something huge went down. She admits she's having a hard time accepting Aisha, even though the Duke forgave her lies. She remembers that the Duke wasn't the only one who loved the missing kids. She thinks back to the staff who raised them from birth. All the servants loved those kids like their own. That happiness was short-lived, though, as tragedy struck while the Duke was at war. She recalls the moment they heard the Duchess and the young masters had vanished. She remembers the shock of a whole family disappearing overnight without a trace. Everyone in the castle spent years searching in despair, and in the middle of that despair, Aisha showed up to take their place and their happiness. May rethink her harshness, realizing Aisha is just a 5-year-old kid. She decides to prep Aisha's meal as
The most important thing about a video is how it sounds. But finding the right audio can be challenging, and that's why I used
for the strawberries she likes. A maid interrupts, announcing the Duke is back with the second lost young master. She adds that Lady Aisha is severely injured. The doctor sadly tells the Duke that the young lady has passed away. The Duke stares at him in shock, unable to believe it. Lucas bursts in screaming, refusing to believe the news since she was talking to him just moments before they arrived. The doctor explains the young lady didn't want to worry the young master. He figures she knew she was in critical condition, but acted fine for Lucas's sake. Lucas screams in denial, begging Aisha to open her eyes. The Duke remembers how he'd imagined meeting his kids over and over for 5 years. He thought about how they were living and how emotional the reunion would be. He never imagined it would end like this. The doctor tries to calm a raging Lucas who won't leave Aisha's side. The Duke feels like a failure as a father all over again. He lets out his grief and rage in a massive ice explosion. He orders everyone out as he stands by Aisha's frozen body. Days later, the servants are whispering about the Duke keeping the room frozen and Aisha's sacrifice to save Lucas. One of the servants feels the atmosphere in the duchy is scarier than ever. Knox tells the Duke that an official document arrived from the Imperial Palace asking when monster subdual will resume. The Duke ignores the report and asks Knox if he's found a way to save Aisha. Knox realizes the Duke is clinging to impossible hope out of guilt. Knox admits to himself that Aisha was never fully accepted, even by the staff, because of that same guilt. He blames himself for doubting his master and refusing to trust the child. He concludes that Aisha pushed herself to this end because of her guilt over not finding the daughter and her sadness over not being recognized. As Knox tells the Duke he'll keep searching, the Duke coughs up blood. Knox panics as he sees the Duke bleeding. He realizes the Duke hasn't slept since that day and tries to calm him down to call a doctor. The Duke curses himself, wondering what kind of hero he is if he can't protect the people he loves. He admits he's completely pathetic. Lucas is carrying a bouquet of flowers when a servant asks where he's going. The maid realizes the young master is going back to that room again. Lucas stands by Aisha's frozen bed and places the flowers. He talks to her, refusing to believe she's dead, and asks when she'll wake up. He assures her they're all looking for a cure and tells her to just wait a bit longer. He says he'll be back tomorrow and wishes her a good night, begging her to wake up and talk to him. A mysterious white cat appears on the balcony, watching the scene. The cat asks Aisha's body if she's finally dead. The cat thinks about how it has seen death countless times in its long life. It declares that the death of animals or monsters never mattered to it. It thought those deaths were no different from any other. But then it remembers how Aisha, a tiny, fragile human, protected it, and how she collapsed while trying to protect a child way stronger than her. It thought she was an idiot at first, but it changed its mind when it saw her face as she was dying. It was like she was screaming that you should never give up and keep living. It wanted to ask her why she had that look in her eyes. Since it hates leaving things unsolved, the cat's spirit enters Aisha's body to get an explanation. It says goodbye to Aisha, saying it'll see her soon. Aisha has a weird dream where shadows surround her and call her name. She finds herself alone in a dark place. A terrifying smile with sharp teeth appears in the dark. She remembers a hand reaching out and someone thanking her. A mysterious boy tells her she'll find out who he is soon and says goodbye. Aisha wakes up to hear the doctor and the Duke discussing asking the royal family for help. She sees the Duke standing there and calls him Sir. She wakes up fully, wondering what happened. Lucas rushes to her and hugs her, asking if she's okay. The shocked doctor calls it a miracle since her heart had definitely stopped. The doctor confirms she's surprisingly healthy despite the bruises. Aisha wonders if she died and came back, trying to make sense of her weird dream. She wonders if the dream was linked to the real Aisha before she took over the body. She wonders who that mysterious boy was. She decides not to tell the Duke about the dream, so he won't worry. She assures everyone she's fine. In fact, she feels healthier than ever. The Duke strictly warns her never to do anything reckless again. She notices the Duke looks pale and way thinner. She sees the worry on Lucas and Knox's faces too, realizing she made everyone anxious again. She promises the Duke she won't cause any more trouble. The doctor insists she rests for a week, and Lucas volunteers to take care of her. She sits in silence with Lucas, wondering why he isn't saying anything even though he clearly wants to. She asks about the flowers in the vase, and he admits he's the one who brought them. Aisha wonders why Lucas brought dandelion seeds instead of blooming flowers. Lucas tells her it's because her hair looks like dandelion fluff. He asks Aisha if she was actually adopted by Duke Crost, and she confirms it. Aisha realizes this was the question Lucas really wanted to ask, but the circus chaos prevented it. She understands why he's upset. While he was kidnapped, she was adopted as the Duke's daughter. She figures he still feels abandoned by the Duke, which must feel like a huge betrayal. Lucas surprises her by suggesting she call him Big Brother instead of his name, since she's his little sister now. Lucas admits he was angry when he heard about the adoption because he felt totally replaced. He adds that despite his anger, he doesn't want to ruin the happiness she finally found. He declares he's decided to accept her as family, seeing her as his savior. He asks if she doesn't want to be part of his family, and she panics and says that's not it. She thinks to herself that as a former adult, it's kinda embarrassing to call him Big Brother. Lucas thinks she doubts his ability to be a good brother and vows to prove himself. Aisha realizes he's misunderstood her and decides to ask for a favor instead of explaining her embarrassment. She asks him to read her a fairy tale book, and he wonders why. But he suddenly stops, making Aisha worry. The doctor interrupts, saying visiting hours are over. As Lucas leaves, Aisha calls out, "Brother Lucas," making him blush as he walks away. Aisha smiles, realizing he's still just a kid despite acting all grown up. When Lucas steps out of the room, he's shocked to see the Duke standing in the dark. The Duke just looks at Lucas quietly and calmly. Aisha realizes the gap between father and son is still pretty deep. She thinks they're going to need more time to clear up all the misunderstandings. The Duke enters Aisha's room to check on her, and she calls him her uncle. He smiles with relief, seeing she's doing better. Aisha thinks about how happy she is to have found Lucas, but she blames herself for almost leaving a deep scar on him. She explains she hated the idea of letting him down with unconfirmed info. The Duke takes her hand and hugs her tenderly, sincerely thanking her for finding Lucas. He deeply apologizes for putting her in danger again. Assures him she's fine and suggests he go talk things out with Lucas. Their talk is interrupted by a knock on the door. It's Sir Knox and May, the head maid. May asks for permission to speak with Aisha for a moment. Both Knox and May bow deeply in apology, admitting their stupid judgment caused her a lot of pain. Knox admits he was suspicious of her from the start after they failed to find the young lady. He owns up to his mistake now that she's proven her loyalty by saving Lucas and risking her life. He adds that if they'd trusted her even a little, she wouldn't have been in so much danger. Knox blames himself, saying her injuries are his fault for sending her to the circus based on a weird report. He sincerely apologizes for not being someone she could rely on while the Duke was away. The Duke is shocked to hear May the head maid apologizing too. May recalls how she rejected Aisha's tea invitation earlier. She admits she cruelly told Aisha that no servant wanted to be near a liar. May expresses deep regret, realizing she was just taking out her grief over the lost young masters on her. She describes how her heart dropped when she heard Aisha was seriously hurt. She insists she wanted to apologize no matter what, even if it's late. May bows, accepting whatever punishment the Duke sees fit. The Duke looks at them strictly after hearing their confessions. Then Aisha tells them they only acted out of worry for him, and points out how hard it is to speak harshly to someone close. She declares she's fine and says she's happy the Duke has such loyal people by his side. She admits she was a bit hurt at first, but thanks them for the sincere apology. The Duke orders Knox and May to call her young lady from now on instead of just her name. He tells them to leave, saying he'll question them about this later. The Duke admits to Aisha he expected the servants wouldn't welcome her, but he chose to just watch. He explains he wanted her to earn their respect on her own, not by his orders. He adds that respect based on power is meaningless, and he was confident she could overcome the struggle. He calls himself a fool for letting her face it all alone. He asks her to tell him if anything bothers her in the future and not to carry the burden by herself. Aisha happily agrees. Outside, May hopes Aisha doesn't get scolded, and Knox reassures her since they don't hear any yelling. May expresses her admiration for the young lady's wisdom, which blew them away. Knox agrees, saying they should be ashamed as adults for taking so long to realize they were wrong. Knox asks May what the young lady likes so he can show how sorry he is. Somewhere else, Tex is collapsing from exhaustion after using his ice powers. His father, the Marquis, tells him he needs to put Aisha in her place during the heir selection ceremony. Tex complains that the medicine giving him the power is running out. The Marquis grabs his son firmly. insisting this is their only chance to rise now that the Duke's direct line is gone. He warns him not to repeat his mother's mistake, hinting at an incident where his name didn't appear as a legitimate heir. It turns out Tex's ice power comes from pills that give temporary abilities. The Marquis thinks that with these pills, he'll easily take control of the Crost family. He sees Aisha as a hurdle, but he's counting on Tex since he's the only one showing powers right now. The Marquis decides to meet that man to get more medicine, as they only have enough for 1 week before the heir selection.